snow fell hard over the small town in Vermont, piling silently on rooftops, mailboxes, and the bare bones of winter trees. The streets were empty, no headlights, no footsteps, no voices, just the wind, whistling low and cruel through every crack and alley. It was a night that warned everything living to stay inside. But something was moving through the storm. A golden retriever, fur matted with snow and ice, nose low to the ground, padded quietly down a back alley behind the only grocery store still half lit. His name was unknown to the world that had let him go. But once, before the cold, before the hunger, someone had called him Frost, a name that now matched the world around him. His ribs were showing, his paw pads were raw, but his steps were steady. Frost wasn't chasing anything anymore. Not squirrels. Not balls. Not affection. He was just searching for warmth, for food, for something to make it through another night. His nose caught the faint trace of bread near a trash bin and he trotted toward it, already drooling a little from the thought of it. Then he stopped. There was something else, a different scent, faint, wrong, plastic, and under that, something living. He turned his head and followed the smell around a corner, toward a snow-covered bag slumped behind a crate. His ears twitched. Inside the black plastic, something shifted. A tiny sound, barely a whimper, then silence. Frost moved closer, sniffed the bag, then nudged it with his nose. A tear had already formed at the seam. Through it, he saw fur, gray, soaked, barely rising with breath. A kitten. His instincts kicked in, older than training, older than memory. Gently, he gripped the bag with his teeth and tore it open wider. The kitten inside was motionless except for a weak, flickering breath. Ice clung to its whiskers. Its fur was soaked through. Frost nosed it again, then started licking, slow, patient. He worked to dry the tiny body, warming the kitten with his tongue the way a mother would. The snow kept falling, and the wind howled past them like a warning. But he didn't stop. After a while, the kitten stirred. Its body gave a shudder, small, involuntary, but real. Frost curled around it, pressing his chest against the kitten's back. He wrapped his front paws gently over the tiny shape and tucked his head down, shielding them both from the wind. There, in the crook of a frozen street, beside a dumpster and a broken bag of trash, they lay still, a dog without a home and a cat barely alive, pressed together against the storm. The snow kept falling, coating them slowly in white. From far away, the town was silent. Lights flickered behind frosted windows. Heaters hummed. But outside, nothing moved, except a faint rise and fall in the snowbank where two living things fought the cold together. The night passed with no kindness from the weather. But still, they breathed. And for the first time in days, Frost didn't sleep alone. The morning after the storm was gray and unforgiving. The sky remained heavy with more snow. And the wind hadn't let up. Frost lifted his head slowly, blinking away the ice crusting his lashes. The weight against his chest stirred. Whiskers. The tiny gray kitten was still breathing. That was all that mattered. Frost hadn't meant to name him, but something about the trembling whiskers brushing against his nose as the kitten fought for warmth had stayed with him. Whiskers, he thought, with a quiet huff of breath. It felt right. The trash bins behind the store had already been picked clean by birds and raccoons. But Frost kept searching. He limped now, his back leg aching and stiff from a fall on black ice the night before. But he didn't slow down. He nosed through frozen wrappers, pushed over a damp cardboard box, and found it, half a slice of dry bread. It was hard as stone and smelled like mold. But it was food. He brought it back to the corner where Whiskers waited under a rusted metal stairwell. The kitten was more alert now. Eyes blinking slowly, Frost dropped the bread in front of him and sat back. Whiskers sniffed it, unsure, then, with hesitant bites, began to nibble. Frost watched, tail flicking slowly across the snow. He didn't eat until Whiskers had finished. That night, they slept under an awning beside a shuttered hardware store. The concrete was cold, but at least the snow couldn't touch them. Frost curled around the kitten again, his injured leg tucked close, wincing when it cramped. Whiskers moved now when he slept, seeking warmth without hesitation. He buried his small face into Frost's chest and let out the tiniest sigh before drifting off. For the next few days, they lived like ghosts in the white world. They took shelter where they could, under bridges, inside cardboard boxes wedged behind alleys, beside dumpsters that steamed in the mornings from the chemical heat. Frost searched every bin for scraps. Sometimes a crust. Once, a bitten apple core. Whatever he found, he shared. His leg grew worse. The swelling made walking painful. But he didn't stop. When the wind picked up or the snow deepened too quickly, he'd crouch down and let Whiskers climb onto his back. The kitten clung to his fur, pressed flat against him, as Frost limped through the streets looking for safety. More than once, he thought about stopping, just lying down and letting the cold take him. But every time he looked back and saw Whiskers curled beside him, sleeping peacefully. Something inside him pushed forward. Not instinct. Something deeper. A choice. He had nothing. No home. No people calling his name. No collar. No bowl. No leash. But he had this small, shivering life that depended on him. And for the first time in his lonely, snow-blown exile, Frost had a purpose. By the end of the week, Whiskers was stronger. He meowed now, tiny chirps that startled even himself. He climbed onto Frost's back without needing help. He licked Frost's face in the mornings, pawed at his ears, curled into his neck like he belonged there. He smelled of snow, of old bread and damp fur. But to Whiskers, that scent was safety. It was warmth. It was home. On their 7th night together, the cold was sharper than usual. Frost could feel it in his bones, deep and aching. They found shelter beneath a broken bench at the edge of a park, shielded from the wind but exposed to everything else. Frost lowered himself carefully. Whiskers crawled into the space between Frost's front legs and chest, tucked his head beneath Frost's chin, and exhaled. Frost sighed in return. As snow began to fall again, light as ash, the two of them closed their eyes. Not alone, not anymore. The sun hadn't yet pierced the thick clouds. Snow fell in a soft, endless drift, blanketing the world in quiet. Emma stood at her kitchen window, clutching a mug of steaming coffee, watching the flakes swirl outside. Her wooden cabin sat alone at the edge of the forest, where the town's last streetlight flickered faintly. She liked the silence, the peace, after long hours at the cafe. This solitude was her balm. She almost missed them. It was only when she opened the front door to sweep off the snow piling on her steps that she noticed the shape. Two shapes. Really? One large, one barely more than a bundle. At first she froze. A dog. Big. Still. His pale golden fur was caked with snow and dirt. Curled tightly against his chest was something smaller, gray, trembling, half buried beneath the thick fluff of his chest. Emma stepped closer. The dog lifted his head slowly. His eyes were dull but wary. He let out a low, tired growl, not aggressive, just a warning. Emma knelt anyway. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice steady but soft. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dog didn't move, didn't lunge. He simply kept his body curled protectively around the kitten, who gave a faint, desperate mewl. Emma saw the wound then, swollen and raw, on the dog's back leg. She didn't wait. She rushed inside, grabbed the thickest towels she had, and came back out. The snow was falling faster now. She moved slowly, wrapping one towel around the kitten first, light and careful. Her hands warm. The kitten didn't resist, too weak to protest. Then she turned to the dog. "Come on, big guy, let me help you." He growled again, but softer this time. More of a breath than a threat. When she slipped the towel over his back, he flinched, then slowly, almost impossibly, allowed her to lift him just enough to gather both animals into her arms. Inside, the cabin was warm. The wood stove crackled with steady orange light. Emma laid them on a thick blanket in front of the fire. The kitten was barely conscious. The dog, shivering violently, still watched her with those tired amber eyes. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, grabbing another towel and kneeling beside them. She worked in silence. She warmed water and cleaned the dog's injured leg gently, flinching herself when he let out a low groan. "You poor thing," she murmured. "How long have you been out there?" The kitten stirred. Emma took a teaspoon, poured warm milk into it, and brought it to his mouth. He barely opened his eyes, but his tongue flicked out. One drop, then another. She smiled. "Good boy," she whispered. "Come on, little one, you've got fight in you." The dog, his breathing slower now, watched everything. Every time Emma moved, he tensed, but he didn't growl anymore. It took hours for their bodies to warm. Emma sat beside him all morning, rubbing the towels across their backs, feeding the kitten in slow, careful drops. She crushed a few crackers into a bowl of broth and left it beside the dog. He didn't eat at first. Only after Whiskers, newly named by the gray tufts around his face, meowed again and curled into her lap did the big dog finally lower his nose to the food and take a bite. That was when she cried a little. Not loudly, just a quiet release, relief, heartbreak, hope, all tangled into the moment. As the fire crackled and the snow kept falling outside, the dog slowly laid his head down. Emma reached forward, gently running her hand along the side of his muzzle. "You're a good boy," she whispered. "You saved him, didn't you?" He didn't answer. "Of course." But as she turned to adjust the blanket over the kitten, she felt something, warm and coarse, press gently against the back of her hand. A soft lick. Emma froze, then looked down. The dog was watching her, not with fear, but with something that felt achingly close to trust. His eyes were tired, his body still tense, but the message was clear. "Thank you," she smiled, brushing snow from his ears. "You need a name," she said quietly. He blinked slowly. "I think Frost suits you. You've lived through enough of it." The dog closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he let himself sleep. The snow still came every few days, layering the town in white silence. But inside the little cabin at the edge of the woods, everything was warm. Frost lay curled in front of the wood stove, one ear flicking slightly with each crackle of the fire. His golden fur had regained its softness, no longer stiff and crusted with ice. The swelling in his hind leg had gone down, and though he still limped slightly, he moved with a quiet confidence now. On his back, nestled between his shoulder blades, Whiskers purred in a tiny gray ball of fuzz and energy. The kitten had made a full recovery, faster than anyone expected. His ribs were no longer sharp, his eyes bright and endlessly curious. He followed Frost everywhere, batting at his tail, biting his ears, tumbling over himself in games only he understood. And somehow, despite his age and size, Frost tolerated it all, letting the kitten clamber over his head or fall asleep wrapped around his nose. They were inseparable. Emma sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea and watching them, her heart full in a way it hadn't been in a long time. Earlier that week, she'd taken them both to the town's small veterinary clinic. Frost had no microchip, no collar. No one had reported a missing golden retriever in the area. The vet estimated he was 4, maybe 5 years old, older than he acted, with the soul of something gentler than most humans deserved. Whiskers, on the other hand, was maybe 8 weeks old when she found him, barely old enough to survive on his own, let alone a week in the bitter snow. No one claimed either of them. So Emma did. She filled out the forms, smiling as she wrote, "Owner, Emma Moore." Under names, she wrote, "Frost and Whiskers, my winter pair." She bought them matching bowls, a soft bed, toys that Whiskers ignored in favor of Frost's tail, a red collar for Frost, though he only wore it when they walked into town. The rest of the time, he moved freely through the cabin and porch, often sitting at the front step like a guardian. He never strayed far. One evening, as the fire burned low and snow began to fall again, Emma sat on the floor beside them. She scratched behind Frost's ears. He leaned into her hand with a low huff, then rested his head on her lap. Whiskers blinked lazily from Frost's back, stretched, and promptly fell asleep again. Emma laughed softly. Then, on impulse, she picked up her phone, snapped a photo, and began to type. Instagram post at Emma's Now Trail. Camera with flash my winter pair. 2 weeks ago, I found this beautiful golden retriever curled up on my porch. Nearly frozen, protecting a tiny kitten he'd rescued from a trash bag. His leg was injured. The kitten could barely breathe. They had no names, no owners, just each other. Now, they're home. Frost sleeps by the fire. Whiskers sleeps on Frost. They saved each other. And somehow, they saved me too. She didn't expect anything, but the post went viral. In a matter of hours. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Comments flooded in. People moved by the bond. The journey. The image of Frost and Whiskers curled together like something out of a storybook. This broke me and healed me at the same time. They chose each other. That's real love. Thank you for sharing this. You gave me hope. A few local reporters reached out. An animal welfare page featured their photo. And soon, donations began pouring in. Not for Emma personally, but for the local shelters she tagged. For rescue groups. For organizations that fought to save animals in harsh winter states. Emma read each message carefully. Some she replied to, some just made her sit quietly, holding the phone in her lap while Frost snored beside her. She hadn't gone looking for this. All she'd done was open a door. But in doing so, she had given 2 lost souls a place to rest. And in return, they'd given her a story the world needed to hear. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees outside and the stove's glow lit the room in orange warmth, Emma lay on the couch, a blanket around her shoulders. Frost was curled below, head resting on her foot. Whiskers was chasing something in his dreams, twitching and purring atop Frost's back. And for the first time in years, the cabin didn't feel so quiet. It felt like home. Snow had begun falling again over the town of Maple Hollow, brushing rooftops in soft white and collecting in the curves of tree branches. But this year, the cold didn't carry the same weight. It wasn't just snow anymore. It was memory, tradition, and something warm at its center. At the heart of that warmth were 3 figures often seen walking together down Main Street: a golden retriever with a red scarf, a silver-gray cat perched proudly in a custom sling on his back, and a young woman with a book tucked under one arm. Frost, Whiskers, and Emma. They had become something of a legend in town. Children called out their names from across sidewalks. Tourists asked for pictures. Local businesses set out treats for both dog and cat. Even the town's library had a small display near the front desk, a framed photo of the 3 from last Christmas. Beneath it a note: "Kindness can change everything." But the real surprise came when Emma released her illustrated children's book, Frost and Whiskers: A Friendship in the Snow. It wasn't fancy, just 40 pages, printed by a small local press. But inside, with watercolored pages and gentle words, she told the story of a dog who didn't give up, a kitten who found a brother, and the quiet love that grew in the cold. The book caught fire. Local schools invited Emma to read it aloud during assembly. She always brought Frost and Whiskers. The moment she opened the first page, students leaned forward, listening in silence. And every time she reached the part where Frost curled around the tiny kitten to keep him alive, Eyes across the room would soften. Then came the questions. Did they really sleep in the snow? Were you scared when you found them? Can I adopt an animal one day too? Emma answered each with patience. But she always came back to the same truth. Kindness starts small. A bowl of milk, a warm towel, a choice not to walk away. After a visit to the elementary school in late autumn, a teacher shared a photo of Frost and Whiskers sitting side by side on a rug in front of the kids. It went viral again. Within days, an animal rescue organization reached out. They wanted to make Frost and Whiskers official ambassadors for their winter outreach campaign, Warm Hearts for Cold Noses. Posters were printed, stickers were made, billboards went up across the state with the image of Frost and Whiskers, tails touching. Eyes bright, beneath the caption, "Rescue, Love, Repeat." Emma didn't ask for any of it. But she welcomed it. Because each time someone smiled at the sight of her two rescued companions, she saw something shift, a softening, a remembering, a spark of compassion in an often tired world. And now, exactly 1 year since that morning on the porch when she found them nearly frozen in the snow, they were back in that same place. The porch was lit with soft strands of Christmas lights, twinkling around the edges of the wooden railing. A fresh dusting of snow covered the steps, just enough to crunch under boots. Frost lay stretched out with his head resting between his paws, wearing the same red scarf he'd gotten last winter. Whiskers curled up on top of him, watching the snow drift lazily down. Emma sat beside them on the bench, wrapped in a thick knit sweater, a mug of cocoa in her hands. She looked down at the two of them, the golden dog who had braved the storm, the kitten who had trusted him, and the bond that had grown from that moment of shared cold. "Do you remember this spot?" she asked softly, more to herself than them. Frost opened one eye, thumped his tail once. Whiskers blinked slowly, let out a soft meow. Emma smiled. "I think you do." The porch light glowed behind them. Inside, the fire crackled just as it had that first night. But now, the cabin was full of color, books on the shelves, paw prints on the floor, toys scattered like confetti, a home made whole by their presence. Far in the distance, church bells chimed for the holiday. Somewhere down the road, someone laughed. The town sparkled under snow and light and story. And on one quiet porch, where once there was only cold and survival, now sat love, warmth, and something stronger than both: belonging. Frost closed his eyes again, letting the snow fall gently over his fur. Whiskers purred, burrowed deeper, and Emma, hand resting gently on Frost's back, whispered, "Thank you for finding each other."
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.